In the annals of World War II, victory is often measured in battalions and strategic bombardments.
Yet, for a group of 43 Japanese women prisoners of war arriving at Camp Royal, Arkansas, in 1944, the true measure of American power wouldn't be found in weaponry, but in the mundane hum of domestic technology. Imagine being conditioned to believe your enemy is economically crippled, only to gaze upon a landscape of unimaginable abundance, where even the smallest farmhouses flaunted electrical wires. A luxury in your homeland. This was the cognitive dissonance. Hanako Yamamoto, a former Osaka textile worker, faced, having braced for deprivation, she instead found herself amidst a spectacle of prosperity that directly contradicted every narrative of Japanese wartime propaganda. The very air around her new confinement carried the scent of abundant soap and freshly laundered linens, a profound luxury in war-torn Japan, hinting at a civilization fundamentally different from what she had been taught. This initial disorienting abundance was merely a prelude. Inside the camp, a persistent, rhythmic war emanated from unseen buildings, a sound that left the women perplexed, yet eerily familiar to Hanako's factory-trained ears. Their captors, far from being punitive, spoke of educational programs and recreational activities, and provided them with mattresses softer than any they had known, even as free laborers. But the true revelation unfolded when Sergeant Betty Collins, an American officer, led them past a long, low structure. Here, through the windows, Hanako's world shattered. Rows of gleaming white machines churned with water, each capable of washing 20 pounds of clothing in just 30 minutes. With 12 such machines operating daily, this was not just a convenience. It was a fundamental challenge to Japan's industrial narrative, a demonstration of industrial capacity so vast it seemed miraculous. These were electric washing machines, and the Americans declared them ubiquitous in American households. This startling encounter with what seemed like science fiction to the Japanese prisoners wasn't just about clean clothes. It was about the fundamental nature of civilization itself. It posed an immediate, existential question. How could a nation possess such advanced, widespread domestic technology while simultaneously being portrayed as a struggling adversary? The implications for the war and for Japan's future were staggering. Before we delve deeper into how these machines and the ingenuity behind them became an unexpected tool for post-war diplomacy and reconstruction, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps us bring these vital historical narratives to a wider audience. Hanako Yamamoto pressed her face to the transport truck's window, her gaze sweeping across the seemingly endless, verdant expanse of the American countryside, dotted with farmhouses that radiated an almost unfathomable prosperity. As a former textile worker from Osaka, she had braced herself for a landscape scarred by wartime deprivation. Instead, what unfolded before her was a spectacle of abundance that directly challenged every narrative of Japanese wartime propaganda. "Look at those houses," whispered Emiko, a young teacher captured during the Saipan evacuation. "Even the smallest ones have electrical wires." The convoy, carrying 43 Japanese women prisoners of war, passed beneath a sign proclaiming Camp Royal, Arkansas. A familiar dread tightened Hanako's stomach as guards approached, but their demeanor, more procedural than punitive, was a stark contrast to the brutal treatment she had been conditioned to anticipate. "Welcome to Roel," Sergeant Betty Collins, an officer whose carefully articulated Japanese conveyed a deliberate intention to reassure, formally announced. "You will undergo registration, be assigned to your barracks, and receive an orientation to the camp's daily routine." Upon disembarking, Hanako's senses registered several striking anomalies. A persistent hum of unseen machinery resonated from various buildings, and the Arkansas breeze carried the unmistakable aroma of soap and freshly laundered linens. Peering through the open door of one structure, she discerned rows of what appeared to be white electrical appliances. "What are those machines?" she inquired in Japanese of a fellow prisoner. "I don't know," came the perplexed reply. "But they sound just like the textile factories back home." The registration process involved each woman receiving a numbered card, a thorough physical examination, and a supply pack that included more soap than Hanako had seen in months. This profound abundance proved disorienting. In Japan, Soap had long been a rare commodity, reserved for only the most essential uses. Tomorrow, you will receive an introduction to the camp's services, Sergeant Collins explained, providing a clearer understanding of their new services. We offer educational programs, recreational activities, and various facilities designed to foster both physical well-being and psychological resilience. That night in the barracks, Hanako lay on a mattress far softer than any she had known in Japan, even as a free worker, listening to the other women speculate on their uncertain future. "Did you see those electrical wires?" asked Mitsuko, a former nurse. "Every building has electricity. In Japan, only the most affluent districts boasted such amenities." Another voice offered, "Perhaps this is merely a facade of propaganda, designed to make us believe America's prosperity is greater than it actually is." Yet, Hanako recalled the faces of the American staff, visibly weary yet unmistakably well-fed, dressed in clean attire, and devoid of any discernible marks of rationing or privation. Whatever America was, it was certainly not the war-torn nation described by Japan's leaders. Outside, the enigmatic hum of machinery persisted through the night, foreshadowing a revelation that would fundamentally challenge these women's understanding of the civilization that had captured them. The following morning brought the most profound revelation of Hanako's captivity. As their group followed Sergeant Collins toward the orientation building, they passed a long, low structure from which rhythmic sloshing and the insistent whir of machinery emanated. "Which building is that?" Emiko asked in broken English. "That's the laundry," Collins responded matter-of-factly. "One of our most popular services." Through the windows of the building, Hanako saw something that brought her to an abrupt halt. Rows of white machines, each approximately the size of a small table, containing churning water, operated by both American personnel and, remarkably, by Japanese prisoners who appeared to be volunteers. "Those machines," Hanako began, then trailed off, struggling to articulate her bewilderment. "Electric washing machines," Collins explained, noting their astonishment. "Each machine can wash 20 pounds of clothing in 30 minutes. We have 12 operating daily." The concept defied their understanding. In Japan, laundry meant hours of hand-washing in cold water with scarce, government-rationed soap. These machines promised to accomplish the same task in minutes, with abundant hot water and a seemingly inexhaustible supply of soap. "Impossible," Mitsuko whispered. "No one has machines like these." "Would you like to see how they work?" Collins asked, with evident pride. Stepping into the laundry room, Hanako experienced an experience bordering on a revelation. Up close, the machines were even more impressive. The gleaming white appliances featured circular glass windows, revealing clothing tumbling within sudsy water, heated to temperatures unattainable by manual means. Mrs. Dorothy J., the facility's supervisor, demonstrated the operation with meticulous enthusiasm. "You put the clothes here, the soap resets the timer, and the machine does everything else. Hot water, agitation, rinsing, and spinning dry." "Spinning dry?" Hanako asked, mesmerized. "Watch this." Mrs. Jenkins opened a machine that had just completed its cycle. The clothes inside were almost dry, requiring merely a brief period on a clothesline, a stark contrast to the full day of arduous air drying they were accustomed to. A Japanese woman named Reiko, who had been working there for several weeks, approached them. "Hanako-san, you won't believe it. They pay us to learn to use these machines. American money, for washing clothes. It's easier than anything we did back home. They pay prisoners." Reiko's eyes sparkled with nascent possibilities. "This money can be used at the camp store. But more importantly," Mrs. Jenkins added, "they are teaching you skills. These machines are ubiquitous in American households. Ordinary families own them." The implication left Hanako speechless. If everyday American families owned technology that appeared miraculous to Japanese workers, what profound implications did this hold for the comparative prosperity of the two nations? Can we touch them?" Himiko hesitantly inquired. Mrs. Jenkins smiled warmly. "My dear, by the weekend, you'll be operating them yourselves. We believe in hands-on learning." As Hanako ran her fingers over the smooth metal surface of an electric washing machine, she realized that everything she had been told about America's technological capabilities was fundamentally erroneous. 3 weeks into her captivity, Hanako stood by electric washing machine number 7. meticulously measuring detergent under Mrs. Jenkins's patient guidance. The process had become familiar, yet the sense of wonder persisted, each cycle feeling like a glimpse of technological magic. "Perfect measure, Hanako," Mrs. Jenkins praised. "You're becoming one of our best operators." The laundry room buzzed with the activity of over a dozen Japanese women working alongside American staff. Their initial astonishment had been replaced by a developing professional proficiency. This transformation extended beyond technical skill. The women moved with a newfound confidence, a stark contrast to the palpable uncertainty that had characterized their initial days at Camp Ro. Mrs. Jenkins, Hanako, her English steadily progressing, inquired cautiously, "I have a question. These machines, how many American families own them?" "Oh, about 30% of households nationwide. More in the cities, a little less in rural areas, but that number is growing fast." 30%. Hanako grappled with the staggering implications of the statistics. If America could equip a prisoner of war camp with electric washing machines, while 30% of its civilian families privately owned them, what did this signify about America's industrial production capacity? That afternoon brought a further significant development. Mrs. Jenkins announced that several prisoners would be selected for advanced training on newer models of machines, which were soon to arrive at the camp. "The Bendix automatic washer," she explained, pointing to a gleaming appliance that appeared even more advanced than their current models. "Fully automatic cycles, multiple temperature settings, larger capacity." Reiko raised her hand. "Mrs. Jenkins, why are you giving prisoners such expensive equipment?" "Because," Mrs. Jenkins responded reflectively, "we have learned that empowering individuals with valuable skills fosters productivity and hope. Furthermore, these machines will be ubiquitous in American households within a decade. We are preparing you for your future." This casual assumption that Japanese prisoners might need to understand American domestic technology struck Hanako as either remarkably prescient or subtly manipulative. Were the Americans subtly suggesting a permanent future in the United States? Mrs. Jenkins gently asked Amiko, "What happens to these machines after the war?" "Some will stay here, if the camp becomes a vocational school. Others will be donated to communities needing laundry facilities. In America, resources are maximized, not discarded." That evening, as Hanako folded clothes that had been cleaned in minutes rather than hours, she mentally drafted a letter to her sister in Osaka, letter she knew might never be sent, detailing wonders that could scarcely be believed. "Dearest Kaori," she imagined writing. "Today, I operated a machine that washed 20 pounds of laundry in 30 minutes, using unlimited hot water and soap. The Americans have hundreds of these machines, and they are teaching enemy prisoners to use them. I no longer understand what kind of war we are fighting." Outside the barracks, the familiar hum of the electric washing machines continued late into the night. The 12 machines hummed tirelessly, diligently processing the garments of prisoners, who were now implicitly learning that their captors' civilization thrived on principles of abundance, not scarcity. The question that haunted Hanako was, could Japan truly compete with a nation that so readily extended such advanced conveniences to its adversaries? 6 months later, Hanako received permission to write her first letter home through Red Cross channels. During a break, she sat in the laundry room, enveloped by the gentle hum of the electric washers, grappling to articulate her experiences without them sounding like fantastical delusions to her family in a wartime. "Reichinet Japan, dear family," she began carefully. "I am healthy and well treated. The facilities here with the Americans suggest their industrial prowess far surpassed anything they had been led to believe." How could she explain that prisoners had access to technology most Japanese civilians had never imagined? She had learned to operate machines that accomplished in minutes what had consumed hours of arduous manual labor for Japanese women. Yuki, a former factory supervisor who was now the de facto laundry coordinator for the camp, called out, "Hanako-san, Mrs. Jenkins wishes to discuss a new training program with you." In the supervisor's office, Mrs. Jenkins spread out technical manuals and photographs, displaying even more advanced washing machines. "Hanako, your mechanical aptitude is truly exceptional. We are initiating a program to train selected prisoners as appliance repair technicians." She pointed to detailed diagrams. "These skills will be valuable after the war, wherever you might be." The implication was undeniable. The Americans expected some prisoners to remain in the United States, to build lives in a nation where electric washing machines were becoming ubiquitous household necessities. Mrs. Jenkins? Hanako hesitated. May I ask a personal question? Of course. Your family, do they own such a washing machine? Mrs. Jenkins smiled. We have a smaller model at home. My husband bought it last year to help with the chores while I am working at the camp. It cost about $300. Quite expensive. But the time it saves is well worth it. $300 was more than Hanako had earned in 2 years as a textile worker in Japan. This casual revelation of such a significant expenditure underscored an economic reality that fundamentally challenged Hanako's every preconceived notion of the two nations. Comparative prosperity that afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Captain Robert Morrison, the camp's technical education coordinator, toured the laundry, visibly proud of the program's achievements. Ladies, he announced to the assembled workers, I have news regarding post-war opportunities. Several appliance manufacturers have expressed interest in hiring trained technicians, regardless of nationality. A silence fell over the room. The possibility of remaining in America, working with the miraculous machines they had learned to operate, was both profoundly tempting and inherently akin to an act of treason. Captain Morrison carefully asked Reiko, what about our families in Japan? That is a personal decision each of you will make when the war ends. But I want you to know that America places high value on skilled workers proficient in modern technology. After the captain departed, the women returned to their work in thoughtful silence. Each wash cycle now symbolized not merely clean clothes, but a future where arduous physical labor could be largely supplanted by mechanical convenience. Hanako, Yuki murmured. Sometimes I don't know if we are prisoners or students. She looked around the laundry room at the seemingly miraculous machinery, at the American supervisors who treated them with professional respect, and at her fellow prisoners learning skills that might be unattainable in a ravaged Japan. Hanako realized that the distinction had blurred into insignificance. Her captors were educating her with technologies that demonstrated the fundamental superiority of their civilization more profoundly than any military conquest ever could. 1 year after her arrival at Camp, Hanako stood before a congressional committee in Washington, D.C., testifying regarding prisoner treatment and the efficacy of technical education programs. The profound irony was not lost on her. A former enemy combatant elucidating for American legislators why investing in prisoner technical education served the national interest. Ms. Yamamoto, Congressman Thompson of Arkansas, stated, You have described in detail the extensive technical training provided to Japanese prisoners. Some members of Congress questioned whether such resources should be devoted to enemy nationals. Hanako, now dressed in a modest yet impeccably tailored dress, carefully chose her words in fluent English. Sir, learning to operate American machines taught us a more profound understanding of your nation's capabilities than any propaganda narrative ever could. Please elaborate on that statement. When I arrived, I believed American industry was primitive in comparison to Japanese manufacturing. Operating electric washing machines showed me that the opposite was true. Japan's entire textile industry would struggle to produce machines of the caliber casually provided to prisoners. In the gallery, she saw Mrs. Jenkins and several other Camp Rolleal staff who had traveled to Washington specifically to support the program's continuation. Congressman Davis of California leaned forward. Are you suggesting that the demonstration of technological superiority constituted a form of psychological warfare? I am suggesting that experiencing American abundance convinced me, and many others, that resistance was futile. Not because we were defeated, but because we had been competing against a civilization we had never truly understood. The questioning continued for 2 hours, with Hanako explaining how washing machine technology became a window into America's industrial might, rendering Japanese wartime propaganda retrospectively absurd. Ms. Yamamoto, Chairman Williams asked, how many of your fellow prisoners chose to remain in the United States? Approximately 70% applied for permanent residency, not out of fear of returning to Japan, but from a desire to participate in a society where ordinary households possessed appliances we once considered miraculous. After the hearing, Hanako discussed the program's future with Captain Morrison and Mrs. Jenkins. The committee seemed supportive. Morrison observed, Your testimony helped them understand that technical education had a strategic imperative extending beyond mere prisoner welfare. Mrs. Jenkins smiled. Hanako, I have good news. Whirlpool Corporation has offered you a position as their regional training coordinator for their nascent Pacific Rim operations. They need someone who understands both American technology and Japanese work culture. This offer represented the culmination of everything Hanako had once only dared to dream. A career built on skills learned in captivity, working with machines that once seemed impossible in a country that had transformed her from a former adversary into a highly valued contributor. There is one condition, she said carefully. I want to help establish training centers in Japan, to bring this technology to women who never imagined such possibilities. That is precisely what they hope you will do, Morrison replied, to effectively bridge the gap between American technological innovation and Japanese practical implementation. 6 months later, Hanako stood in a new training facility in Tokyo, watching Japanese women experience the identical sense of wonder she had felt upon first encountering an electric washing machine at Camp Rowell. Can we really take one home? A young worker asked, her question mirroring Hanako's own initial inquiry. One day, Hanako replied, reflecting on her extraordinary journey from prisoner to instructor. But first, let me show you how they work. As the familiar hum of electric washing machines filled the Tokyo facility, Hanako reflected on the improbable path that had led her there. From enemy captive to cultural ambassador, disseminating American technology through the patient tutelage she had received from those who understood that true victory lay not in defeating an enemy but in transforming them into willing participants in a superior civilization. 2 years after establishing the Tokyo Training Center, Hanako received a letter that would again change everything. Bearing the seal of the U.S. State Department, it contained an astonishing invitation. The American government wanted her to testify before the United Nations as a key witness to the efficacy of technology transfer as a tool for post-war reconstruction. Ms. Yamamoto, the letter read, your unique experience in combining American industrial methods with Japanese implementation makes you an invaluable asset to discussions surrounding peaceful technological collaboration between former adversarial nations. Sitting in her Tokyo apartment, surrounded by photographs from Camp Rowell and technical manuals for the latest American appliances, Hanako marveled at the trajectory of her life that had culminated in this pivotal moment. 3 years prior, she was a prisoner learning to operate a washing machine. Now, she was being asked to contribute to the formulation of international policy. Hanako-san, her assistant, Corey, entered with the day's correspondence. The representatives from Mitsubishi are here for the demonstration. In the main hall of the training center, a dozen Japanese executives watched as Hanako demonstrated the latest Bendix automatic washer, the very model she had first encountered as a prisoner, now authorized for production in Japan. Gentlemen, she explained in formal Japanese, this technology represents more than mechanical innovation. It demonstrates a philosophy of abundance over scarcity, of efficiency over endurance. Mr. Tish, Mitsubishi's chief engineer, raised his hand. Ms. Yamamoto, our research indicates these machines demand excessive electricity and water, rendering them impractical for Japanese households. Hanako smiled, recalling the very same initial objections she had harbored years ago. Sir, that presumes that Japanese households will indefinitely remain as resource-constrained as they were during the conflict. American homes were not always abundant in electricity either. Infrastructure development can readily support an enhanced standard of living. After the demonstration, she walked through the reconstructed areas of Tokyo, noticing gradual changes. Electrical wires were being strung to more communities, water systems were being expanded, and small appliance stores were beginning to appear. These were signs that Japan was gradually aligning with American standards of domestic technology. That evening, a familiar face appeared at her door. Reiko, her former colleague from Camp Rowell, now served as a representative for General Electric's burgeoning operations in Asia. Hanako, Reiko said, settling into the small apartment's sitting area. I have a proposition. General Electric wants to form a joint venture with Japanese manufacturers. They require someone with a profound understanding of both cultures to orchestrate this transition. What kind of joint venture? To produce washing machines in Japan for the Asian market, using American technology, Japanese craftsmanship, and managed by the very women who learned both systems as prisoners of war. The poetic irony was undeniable. Former captives, leveraging skills learned in confinement, bringing American technology to the very nation that had sent them to war. One more thing, Reiko continued. Mrs. Jenkins is retiring from government service soon. She wants to join our operation as technical director. She says working with Japanese women has been the most meaningful experience of her career. Hanako imagined Mrs. Jenkins, the patient teacher, the unexpected friend, the symbol of American goodwill who had transformed former adversaries into willing collaborators simply through the judicious sharing of knowledge. When do we start? Asked it. 5 years after the war's conclusion. Hanako stood in a state-of-the-art factory on the outskirts of Osaka, watching the first Japanese-made Bendix washing machines roll off the assembly line, operated by women who had learned American technology in prisoner of war camps. This scene represented a truly unprecedented spectacle. Former adversaries collaborating to introduce advanced technology into ordinary Japanese households. Production targets met. Mrs. Jenkins, now technical director, announced in surprisingly fluent Japanese. 200 units this week, all meeting American quality standards. On the factory floor, former Camp Roel prisoners worked alongside American technicians and Japanese engineers. Their combined expertise forged innovative manufacturing methods that neither nation could have conceived in isolation. Hanako-san, called Yuki, now the factory's quality control supervisor. We have guests from the Ministry of Trade. A government delegation toured the factory, visibly astonished, meticulously taking notes as Hanako explained how prisoner-trained workers had become the bedrock of Japan's burgeoning appliance industry. Ms. Yamamoto, Minister Sato stated, this operation challenges conventional notions of technology transfer. Typically, defeated nations receive outdated equipment. You are manufacturing cutting-edge appliances. Minister, the Americans taught us these skills, not out of charity, but as an investment. They understood that prosperous trade partners serve collective interests far more effectively than impoverished adversaries. That afternoon brought news that affirmed their approach, an order for 5,000 washing machines from department stores across Japan, with a waiting list indicating demand far exceeded supply. The middle class is growing, Mrs. Jenkins observed as she reviewed the orders. Families want to enjoy the same conveniences that American prisoners demonstrated during the war. The profound, multi-layered irony of that observation resonated deeply with all present. Technology initially used to placate enemy captives was now driving Japan's economic recovery and laying the groundwork for future prosperity. Mrs. Jenkins, Hanako asked, do you ever regret teaching prisoners skills that now compete with American manufacturers? Never. Competition makes everyone better. Besides, these machines will be sold across Asia, creating markets the American companies can never reach alone. That night, Hanako received a telegram from Captain Morrison, now contributing to the Marshall Plan efforts in Europe. It read, congratulations on factory success. Your model is being studied for technology transfer programs in Germany and Italy. Former enemies becoming partners through shared knowledge. As she walked through the streets of Tokyo, brightly lit and increasingly filled with modern conveniences, Hanako reflected on the transformation her nation was undergoing. The devastation of defeat was giving way to a prosperity built on lessons learned from captors who understood that lasting victory came from rebuilding, not revenge. Back at her apartment, she received a package from America. It was the latest Whirlpool product catalog, a thoughtful gesture from former Camprol staff with whom she maintained transatlantic friendships. Turning the pages, which displayed washing machines, dryers, refrigerators, and other appliances, she realized these were not merely consumer commodities, but powerful symbols of a lifestyle Japan was gradually embracing. The war had ended with an American victory, but peace was being built with something more valuable: the patient transfer of knowledge, elevating former adversaries to shared prosperity rather than crushing them into permanent subjugation. 10 years after her captivity, Hanako stood before the United Nations General Assembly in New York, addressing delegates from 60 nations on the role of technology transfer in post-war reconstruction. Behind her, a large photograph displayed the laundry room at Camp Roel, the place where former enemies first learned to operate machines that would change their understanding of what civilization could offer. Distinguished delegates, she began, I stand here as a testament that the most potent weapon against future conflict is not military might, but the patient sharing of knowledge that elevates all nations to prosperity. In the audience, she spotted familiar faces. Mrs. Jenkins, now retired but serving as a UN consultant, Captain Morrison, representing the State Department, and Raiko, whose corporate operations had expanded across Asia. The electric washing machine, Hanako continued, taught Japanese prisoners more about American capabilities than any interrogation ever could. We learned that our captors possessed not only superior weapons, but a superior way of life, one we ultimately wish to emulate and share, not to destroy. After the speech, delegates from developing nations approached her, inquiring how similar programs could be implemented for their own reconstruction efforts. Ms. Yamamoto, the delegate from the Philippines, asked, "How can we persuade former colonial powers to share advanced technology rather than perpetuate economic dominance?" "By demonstrating that prosperous partners create larger markets than impoverished subjects. America earns far more profit selling washing machines to Japan, as middle-class families, than it ever could, by keeping Japan weak and dependent." That evening, at a reception hosted by the Japanese delegation, Hanako conversed with Dean Acheson, the U.S. Secretary of State who had been instrumental in approving the original prisoner education program. "Ms. Yamamoto, your success story has influenced the policies of successive administrations. We learned that investing in the prosperity of former adversaries served American interests more effectively than punitive occupation. Mr. Secretary, that is a credit to people like Mrs. Jenkins, who saw prisoners as potential students rather than permanent enemies, and to prisoners like myself, who chose to learn rather than resist as night fell." Hanako walked the streets of New York, marveling at the city's evident prosperity, the very abundance that had once seemed impossible from wartime Japan. Neon advertisements promoted appliances increasingly common worldwide, proof that industrial might conquered not through brute force, but through compelling demonstration. 6 months later, Hanako opened her third training facility, this time in Seoul, where Korean women learned to operate the same washing machines that had astonished Japanese prisoners. The technology was spreading across Asia, carried by those who had experienced its transformative power firsthand. "Can we really take one home?" a young Korean worker asked, her eyes wide with the same wonder Hanako had felt years ago at Camp Rowell. "One day," Hanako replied, reflecting on her journey from prisoner to teacher to international consultant. "But first, let me show you how they work." As the electric washing machines hummed in Seoul, just as they did in Arkansas, Tokyo, and dozens of other places where former enemies were learning to build better lives through shared knowledge, Hanako realized that World War II's most enduring victory was not military conquest, but the patient demonstration that prosperity was possible for everyone. The war had ended with an American victory, but peace was being built, one washing machine at a time, teaching the world that the best way to defeat an enemy is to help them become a friend by simply recognizing that everyone deserves access to technology that makes life easier, cleaner, and more hopeful. Standing in the Seoul facility, surrounded by the familiar hum of electric washing machines, operated by women discovering new possibilities, Hanako Yamamoto, former prisoner, current teacher, and an eternal student of human possibility, smiled and began another lesson in the transformative power of shared knowledge.